This is your Marijuana Cultivation Cannabis Podcast. I'm your host, Steven Glansberg, broadcasting from James A. Garfield Studios. If you're tuning in today, we are going to be talking about strain selection, one of the most crucial decisions you'll make as a cannabis grower. Choosing the right strains and finding reputable companies to buy your seeds from is the basis for how good our grow is going to be. We're also going to get into a few listener questions that I got regarding strain selection. And as always, we're going to get into cannabis news. Like I've said before, we'll do that last because if you're listening to this in the future, hopefully it's legal everywhere and that will be irrelevant and you can turn the podcast off after listener questions. Reminder to send me your emails at contactmccpod@gmail.com. Let me know what I screwed up. Let me know your questions. Let me know your ideas, whatever you got for me. Love to hear listener feedback. So, without further ado, intro music is finishing up. So let's get into it. So, the old school thinking of cannabis genetics go into indica, sativa, and hybrid a lot. You've probably heard a lot about these three types of cannabis genetics. You know, the old indica, indicouch, sativa are going to make you more active, hybrid, a combination of both. There's a lot of controversy surrounding this lately. There's a lot of folks that are claiming that it's not the genetics within the indica sativa hybrid spectrum that matter. It's more of the terpene profile that matters and how that will affect your experience. We are going to look at both and we're going to take as much information as we can and boil it down to stuff that we can use. It's constantly evolving, and given its schedule over there in the States with the DEA, we haven't had a lot of research on it. So hopefully that changes in the future. So a lot of this stuff will be changing as we go forward, but this is the latest that we have. So with indica strains, they're going to be typically shorter and bushier, and they're going to be more known for their calming effects. And then these plants will also tend to have a faster flowering time. So if you're trying to turn around your harvest quickly, they're a solid choice. It does seem like a lot of growers that are selling are growing indica because, like we say, it's smaller and bushier for an indoor discrete grow, and it grows more quickly. Some popular indica strains include Northern Lights and Afghan Kush. Then we look over at sativa. So if you're looking for something that is uplifting and energetic, sativa strains are your go-to. Keep in mind they do grow taller and might be too big for your smaller grow space. So that being said, other factors to consider are your grow environment. Thinking about indoor versus outdoor. If you're growing indoors, you've got a lot more control over your environment, which means you can grow just about any strain so long as you manage your space and your temperature and your light. But outdoors, you need to consider your local climate, obviously. Strains with shorter flowering times are better for areas with shorter growing seasons, while long flowering strains work well in warmer climates with extended summers. And your grow space indoors plays a huge role in strain selection. If you got a small tent or a closet grow, you'll want to stick with compact, bushy indicas. or autoflowering strains, which tend to stay small. If you got a big open room or an outdoor garden, sativas and larger hybrids will have the space they need to stretch out. So we really want to match our climate with what we're growing when we're growing outdoors. If you're in a humid area, look for mold-resistant strains, and in hot, dry climates, you need to look for those drought-resistant strains that will be good for your grow. And additionally, always consider the weather patterns in your area when choosing a strain for an outdoor grow. And consider your neighbors. So we have our foundation. We know what we can grow. So then we decide on the effects that we want with our product. And the effects are arguably just as important as how it grows. I mean, this is what we're going for, right? Do you want something that'll chill you out after a long day, or are you looking for a strain that'll keep you buzzing with energy? If you're looking for that relaxing strain, something to help you unwind, look for something that's indica dominant. Strains like Granddaddy Purple or Bubba Kush are popular strains that are known for their soothing effects and are great for evening use. If you're looking for an energizing strain, a daytime pick-me-up, sativa strains like Green Crack or Super Lemon Haze are fantastic. They're uplifting and can help with focus and creativity. If you're looking for something in between for those balanced effects, a hybrid strain will be your best option. Strains like Girl Scout Cookies or White Widow offer a mix of body relaxation and cerebral stimulation, making them versatile options. So where do we get these strains? We want to be choosing a reputable seed company. Avoid those Facebook groups. Once you decide on the type of strain you want to grow, here's what we're going to look for. We're going to look for seed banks with a strong reputation in the community. Look for companies that have been around for a while and have a good track record. Some top seed banks that I've used are Barney's Farm, Dutch Passion, and Sensi Seeds. These companies have been around for a while, so that's why I chose them, and I had great success. And if you're looking to buy a bunch of different types of seeds, I like Seedsman. It offers a ton of different breeder seeds and some strains that are harder to find. And look for that germination guarantee. You know, a good seed bank should stand by the quality of their seeds with some sort of germination guarantee. So if your seeds don't sprout, they will replace them for free. And I've always argued it's a lot more than just your seeds that are being messed up. You know, if you get a Hermie, you're not finding out about that until weeks into your growth. So you've wasted all that time, effort, energy, electricity, material, and all you get is your seeds back. So I don't want to get to the point where I'm having to ask for a refund. I'm getting good genetics at the front. Another thing to keep in mind with these breeders or websites or wherever you're getting these seeds from, seed banks, is discreet shipping. If you're in a region where it's less welcome than another region, many companies will offer discreet shipping for no additional cost. So that's cool. Some final notes. You will get cheaper prices if you stick to the same strain. So it's hard to find a deal where, hey, I'll buy one seed of this strain, one seed of that strain. So if you are trying to get the best bang for your buck, get a multi-pack of the same strain and you'll save quite a bit of money. I've had a lot of good success with Blimburn as well. It's another one I didn't mention where they'll oftentimes have 2-for-1 deals. So if I'm buying, 6 seeds of a certain strain, I get another 6 of that same strain free. It's kind of annoying when you want 1 seed of a certain strain and 1 seed of another strain, 1 seed of another strain, because you're paying that full one-piece price. But that's the cost of doing business with this industry at the moment. And, we don't want to be skimping considering all the other costs that we're going to be putting into it down the line throughout its grow. So I just kind of say, whatever the cost of the seeds are, that's what they are. I'm not too worried about it, considering the vast majority of my costs are going to be down the line when I'm growing and I'm using my time and I'm using my electricity and I'm using my soil or I'm using my cocoa and I'm using my newts from Canna that are kind of expensive. So I just get good seeds and I try and save money elsewhere. All right, strain selection questions from our listeners. Hey, Steven, I am growing in a small space and I'm worried about mold. What strains would you recommend? That's a good question. If you're growing in a small space, especially one that's prone to mold with those humidity issues, obviously look for strains that are resistant to mold. Northern Lights, I know, is a good one. It's a classic. It's known for its resilience, hard to mess up. Another one would be Jack Hare. That's another hardy one, and it can withstand a bit of humidity without succumbing to mold. Good question. Ooh, we didn't talk about autoflowering strains. So most of these strains that I mentioned are also available in autoflowering varieties, which is cool. Keep in mind when you're reading the stats about your particular autoflower, a lot of times they're just going to pull those same stats from their regular photoperiod strain and throw them right on the description underneath their autoflowering varieties. And I call BS on that because there's no way it's identical when you have that ruderalis genetic component in there. But that being said, they do at least claim to be very similar to the photoperiod variety. So you can get almost any photoperiod variety in an autoflower these days with these classic strains. I think autoflowers are fantastic for beginners, to answer the question, especially if you want a quick turnaround. I know when I first started, when it became legal in my country, my first harvest, I couldn't come quick enough. So I went in with an autoflower. And another thing you can do if you want a quick turnaround is grow in a smaller pot with those autoflowers. So if you grow in a solo cup, it'll grow just fine. It'll grow maybe 3 feet tall, and you'll get some buds out of that, or like a 1/4 gallon fabric pot if you're just messing around. So you can really tailor those autoflowers for a quicker turnaround, especially if you use a smaller pot. And then you don't have to worry about that light cycle. That is not that difficult once you get used to growing, but for your first run, don't even worry about it. Just have your lights on. You know, I do a 20/4 cycle for lighting when it comes to my autoflowers, and it works great, and you don't have to touch it for the whole time. And then again, they're more compact. So if you're growing in a small space, which a lot of us beginners are doing, that's another plus. Just keep in mind that because they flower on their own, you have less control over the timing. So if you're having a mess up, you can't say, hey, I'm going to veg for a couple extra weeks. It's just going to flower. But for a lot of new growers, this simplicity is an overall plus. All right, so moving on to the latest cannabis news. I found this article this morning. Maryland, a state over there in the U.S., smokes 44 tons of cannabis in its first 6 months of legal adult use. I don't think Maryland's that big of a state either. I don't know U.S. geography that well, but that's crazy. That amount resulted in $377 million in adult use sales alone. And then another $180 million was generated in medical sales. Fast forward to today, we are at $1.1 billion in total market sales in the first year of adult use legalization in Maryland. Holy cow. To put that in perspective, 44 tons is roughly the weight of 4.5 school buses. And this June, there was a total market record of 19 million in sales of just vapes in June. Vapes, controversial. And speaking of cannabis booms, our friends down in Australia are experiencing a wave of medical cannabis legalization recently, and it's expected to expand over the next few years, which is pressuring the Australian government to consider the full combination of public support and the success of the medical market to make Australia lean toward legalization, which would then make them a player in the global cannabis industry. These politicians don't want to be left behind. Over in France, there goes my phone. France has been slow to adapt cannabis reforms compared to other European countries, but it's looking like things are starting to change. The country recently expanded its medical cannabis pilot program, which is allowing more patients to access treatment. And, this move is seen as a step towards broader acceptance of cannabis over there in France and could eventually lead to full legalization. We've seen it time and time again. It starts with medical and goes to rec. Don't matter what country you're in, that's just the pattern that we've seen. So although it's infuriating on a surface level to think that we need to go through all these regulations and medical programs and years of waiting, it is what it is. And it's the cards that we're being dealt right now, and we just got to play them. And we'll end on some news out of the UK. We know how volatile that situation has been for a long time when it comes to cannabis. An article from Hywell Griffith just yesterday from the BBC mentioned that organized crime groups have been targeting empty shops and pubs in town centers to grow cannabis on an industrial scale, say police bosses. Over the past year, raids have been carried out in dozens of properties, from an old toy shop in Ayr, Scotland, to a former bank in Westpool, Powys. Vacant restaurants, cafes, nightclubs, bingo halls, and office buildings have all been used to grow the drug, according to the National Police Chiefs Council. In Newport, South Wales, criminals used several floors of a former department store on the main shopping street to grow more than 3,000 cannabis plants. Estate agents, electricians, and tradespeople have been warned they face prosecution if they help gangs convert the buildings to cannabis farms. Chief Constable Richard Lewis, real Richard indeed, the National Police Chiefs Council, lead on drugs, said the decline of many high streets in recent years had created an opportunity for criminals. Commercial properties are attractive to organized crime groups for the whole host of reasons, he explained. Large-scale shops have closed down, and therefore the footprint to produce cannabis on a larger scale becomes available. Mr. Lewis said the lack of footfall during the evening meant the cannabis farms could go undetected. You don't see large numbers of people in the evening anymore. Neighbors in the residential properties would notice things more readily, he said. God, get a real job. Last year, there was an intensification of police operation to target cannabis farms, with the issue of 1,000 warrants and nearly 1,000 arrests. So it's good that they're focusing on this stuff when there's riots and stuff going over there right now. And I think a lot of it has to do with race. So good to be tackling this issue versus racist riots. Anyway, I'm steamed now. I think that'll do it for news. Thank you for joining us for this episode of your Marijuana Cultivation Cannabis Podcast. Let me know what I screwed up. Contact mccpod@gmail.com. Send me your listener questions and send me your feedback. That is contact mccpod@gmail.com. Have a beautiful Saturday. Peace.